Great. Howdy, y'all. Joe Hills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee. And today I'm joined by talented creative fiction and technical author Leonard Richardson. You want to say howdy?
Hi, folks. And howdy.
Excellent. Two greetings. That's a value you can't...
kind of fake when I say howdy.
Well, people accuse me of sounding fake when I say howdy, too. And they're like, you don't really live in Tennessee. I'm like, here, I put a picture up on the Instagram of my brother graduating from high school in Tullahoma, Tennessee. That's where I went to high school. Get a yearbook. I guess that was Vine. Yeah, not Instagram. Whatever. Fact check everything. But yeah, no, that one's on Vine, not Instagram. I apologize for the earlier deception. Anyway, what we're hoping to talk about today is separating our creative role models, our heroes or our idols, from the good work that they do. And this isn't necessarily just creative folks. I mean, there are role models in every field. There are athletic role models, there are governmental role models, but I think what's important to talk or to understand is that everyone's just people. And I got started thinking about this, reading about J.D. Salinger in the book Salinger by Shields and Salerno, the new kind of biography, 700-page biography of J.D. Salinger. Kind of not the best use of my time, probably, but I had the audiobook, so I could do it while I was doing other stuff. Anyway, the guy was kind of insane. Not really entirely his fault. He kind of went to World War II and was one of the first people, into the concentration camps.
Oh, wow.
And it clearly messed him up. And I'm going to say, it didn't necessarily make him a worse person than he was already, but it kind of suspended his development at the age of 21 or 22, so he never really got past it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And, in the case of Salinger in particular, the book Catcher in the Rye is super famous, one of the best-selling books of all time. And it was written by this guy who had this deep psychic damage from this visit to the concentration camps. And I say visit oh yeah, I'm going to stop by. That's
what they do now.
Yeah, now you can go and you can visit, and it's a museum, mausoleum. Those are hard words to combine. This is a really dark subject, so any jokes I'm making are to help you, the listener, get through this show, not necessarily me trying to in any way diminish the sheer and absolute horror of what was experienced there. I'm not going to make any jokes at the expense of the people who suffered, because that is pretty much inexcusable. But so anyway, this famous author visited a famous place that was insanely terrible, and for the whole rest of his life he was very troubled, and he had a hard time separating out, his neuroses from what he needed to do to get by. And one of the reasons we're in creative mode is so that we can play with things like the daytime. Oh, I don't have permission to time day. Okay, well, that went well. But also so that we can fly around and build. But I was gonna say, if I was gonna build something that demonstrated neuroses over here on the ground by the lava, it would probably be something like this, where it's just completely terribly shaped. And you can throw some blocks on this, Leonard.
I'm going to put some wood.
Excellent.
Catch on fire.
Excellent. That's why I built this with wool, because neuroses are just these terrible things, and people all have them to some degree or another, and they get hung up on them. And when you look at these eccentric famous people, like authors, like J.D. Salinger in particular, it's okay, this guy was a complete hermit, and he had all these crazy habits. Maybe that's why he was such a good author. And I'm going to contend that that's not the case. And this is where Leonard's experience is going to come in, because Leonard is also an author. He wrote one of the coolest books I have read in the last decade. It convinced me that the novel was not dead as a format. I'm going to be honest, I'd kind of given up on the novel until I read your Constellation Games, because I was just this is it's too slow. It's not what people want. It's going to die because of cell phones and Kindles and stuff. People just don't want novels.
It's not what people want, or it's not what you want?
I didn't, I tend to project, this is one of my many neuroses. I tend to project what I want onto other people. So don't do that, kids. But But yeah, so as you can see, as much as the fires are consuming these wool-shaped neuroses, they are continuing to grow. But
yeah, I changed to coal blocks because those would burn for a longer time. I feel like that's more emblematic of neuroses.
You know, some burn fast, some burn slow, some burn in the pot 5 days old. But I was going to say, like, you know, you write fiction and you write technical works, and you presumably have a process that does not involve completely shutting yourself off from society and yelling at people who show up and try to talk to you and things like that.
No, I try not to yell. I'm not a huge fan of talking to random people, but I wouldn't say I'm like a hermit. But there is when you write fiction, it's usually about stuff happening that's kind of unpleasant. And I think that writers, and I mean everyone has this, but I think writers either have more of it or they kind of have license to express it. We have these sort of really unpleasant things in our psyches, and sometimes writing is a way of getting them out, or at least letting them out for a while in a way where you won't get into trouble.
Well, and that not getting into trouble is a very valid point. Like, I'm one of those people who, a lot of this stuff with you know, privacy and with the NSA and whatnot, that's, you know, yes, we got confirmation of that with the Snowden leaks and whatnot, but a lot of that was kind of suspected, or there was some proof of it, but it wasn't particularly conclusive. But that whole privacy thing has been bothering me for years.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, I'd had some people who I knew who, you know, kind of would be like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, don't mention that on the telephone, you know. And I was just kind of like, that's a little odd, you know. And, you know, I started realizing, you know, how scary this security apparatus was. And one of the reasons that I got into YouTube was I was just like, if the government's going to listen to, like, everything I say all the time, or if they have that potential, you know, just the idea of them being able to do this was, like, maddening to me. I was, like, really I was like, I don't want somebody, you know, holding something I say against me now, you know, 80 years from now. That sort of thing is, you know, with data collection and whatnot. I was just like, I might as well just record pretty much everything I say and just put it out on the internet, you know? Like, why should the government be the only ones that get to enjoy listening to me? And
that's a very writer type thought to have. My genius must be shared with the world.
Well, or my insanity. Like, you know, nobody can say I had something to hide. I'm just gonna get out there and say all this weird stuff and see how it goes. And, you know, I've been very fortunate, you know, that it's been well received, and, you know. But it's kind of funny, though, as I was reading Salinger's book, like, about how, like, I had, all I really knew about him before reading this biography was that he was the basis for the character Terrence Mann in Field of Dreams.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen Field of Dreams.
I saw it when I was a kid. Is he the guy who builds the baseball field?
No, he's the author that Ray Kinsella, the baseball field builder, pursues.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so anyway, but he's this shut-in in the book, and I was like, okay, so clearly J.D. Salinger's a weird shut-in, whatever, that's fine. And so I started, you know, reading this biography, and it turns out that he wasn't, like, a shut-in all at once. It was kind of this progression of, like, somebody, he would, like, do something nice for someone, and then they would, like, take advantage of him. And the set of people who he was nice to, who took advantage of him, just kept growing until it encompassed, like, everyone. Are you spawning blazes?
Yeah, I thought that might be. They're too loud, though. I'm gonna kill this one.
I was gonna say that's entirely metaphorically appropriate, but
yeah. But yeah, they make too much noise.
Yeah, they are a little bit whiny. But, and so as I'm reading about how, like, you know, just one by one, all these different individual experiences, like, angered him, and he became the shut-in. I was like, oh, that's the kind of thing that I would do. Not because, like, I mean, it would take decades, which it did for him as well, but, like, you know, if I'm, like, trying to do something, you know, if I'm trying to do something and it just completely backfires, I'm just like, well, I'm not trying that again. That was a waste of my time, you know? And so, like, reading this book actually kind of got me to think, like, okay, maybe I should give certain experiences or certain people another chance. Not, you know, not because I'm like, oh, okay, J.D. Salinger's a great author, I want to do exactly what he does, but, oh, J.D. Salinger's a great author, I want to be nothing like him. You
right.
know, I need to...
a negative role model.
Exactly. And so, you know, like, let's say that there's a... you know, a movie star, an athlete, or depending on what your field is, you know, there might be somebody who's, like, really awesome at what they do, but you look at them and, like, oh, it's like how they handle their family life is, like, not what you want to do at all.
Sure.
Don't despair and be like, oh, my God, you know, that's the only way to get ahead in this field. Be like, yeah, I'm going to do better than that person. And maybe I'm not going to do better than that person at the particular thing that they are best at, like... I'm never going to be a better fiction author than J.D. Salinger. I'm okay with that. But, you know, I think I'm going to be a less terrible father or husband, you know? And that doesn't mean I'm not going to pursue creative things as well. But, you know, I'm gonna do it in a way that I'm happy. Because, like, it seems kind of like he wasn't. And that's not good, you know? Like,
yeah. There's this... thing that I think kind of worries a lot of creative people, that their neuroses are somehow the fuel for their creativity, because they do often go hand in hand.
Yes, and this was a concern for the Penny Arcade guys before
really?
that. Yeah, because they both had some pretty serious problems with depression. And they were worried about going on depression medication because they were worried that they wouldn't be able to be creative anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Like, do you know about David Foster Wallace?
David Foster Wallace.
Who
No.
wrote Infinite Jest?
No, I didn't.
Well, one, I recommend Infinite Jest because it's a really excellent sort of near-future science fiction novel, although it's not marketed as science fiction. But it's also... sort of a internal investigation into addiction and mental problems. And I may get some of these details wrong, but David Foster Wallace in real life went on depression medication. He was on it for a while. He was on it, I think, for maybe 15 or 20 years, and around... you know, in the mid 2000s, he went on a different medication. He switched medications, and the new medication didn't work. So he switched back to the old medication, but by that time, the old medication had also stopped working.
Uh-oh.
And I think it was in 2007, he killed himself.
Oof.
And it's, you know, it was a really horrible loss, and I think that specific combination is especially terrifying, where, you know, you sort of have this strategy that lets you get by, and then something changes and it doesn't work anymore, and then what do you do? And I think, you know, even when it's not a life and death thing, like, you know, clinical depression, a creative person is often worried about their creativity just going away, because it's not something, you know, there's stuff you can consciously do to make it run better, but ultimately you kind of don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems with one of the biggest problems with creativity, I agree, is where does it come from, and how can I ensure it will continue to be there tomorrow? How can I keep being an interesting person? And I've found that one of the best ways to counter that, like, usually if I'm feeling creatively blocked, it's because I haven't done anything interesting for a while. And sometimes I'm so focused on being productive that I'm not actually experiencing new things, you know? And that holds me up. And also, like, there's other things that affect creativity, too. and it gets really scary. Like when we had the baby, we stopped sleeping really, and the baby is only now like barely almost starting to sleep through the night. Like she's up to like 5 or 6 hours sometimes, which is great. But for the first few months, it's like, okay, 4 months where I'm getting woken up every hour. And I was thinking, like, I've got no motivation. I have no energy. I'm miserable, like, all the time. Not, like, unhappy, but just, like, miserable. Just, like, what's the point, And I thought, like, should I go see a psychiatrist? I really think that, like, I've got, like, terrible clinical depression. But I realized that I had one more symptom that didn't line up with clinical depression, and that was lack of hand-eye coordination. Every time I tried to use my keys, I would, like, either miss the door or, like, drop them or something.
Okay.
And I was like, if I can't use a door because of hand-eye coordination, and I have all these other symptoms of depression that also overlap heavily with symptoms of sleep deprivation,
right?
Maybe I should just comfort myself by believing it's just sleep deprivation. You know? But the problem with that is it still took like 5 more months for the baby to settle into a decent sleep cycle, whereas I could have gotten depression medication right away.
Right. I'm kind of glad you didn't. I think that would have been overprescribing the depression medication.
But, when you're in it, when you're feeling miserable and terrible and you can't do anything, like, you just get frustrated, and it's hard to tell, and, like, taking a break and taking a vacation. This is, some kids listen to the show and they know that I've been trying to tell them, like, hey, if your parents have a new baby, like, be really cool to them because they might be feeling terrible, but, like, it's because I've been there and it's pretty bad. But, I'm coming back from that now. I'm starting to get more sleep, and I'm feeling a lot more creatively energized. And reading that Salinger book, like I said, I just kept seeing these little things where it's like, oh, that's how you take a minor neurosis and then let it progress for 2 decades until you're actually, a shut-in or crazy. And, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of rejuvenate yourself, like, when you're feeling a little bit, like, blocked? Not blocked. Blocked is such a loaded word, but, like, when you're not feeling very energetic creatively.
It really helps to experience other people's creativity. So, like, I live in New York City, so I go to the Metropolitan Museum a lot, which is this enormous museum that sort of covers the entire history of art up to, let's say, 1955, and then the MoMA takes over. But I go there a lot. I like looking at really old stuff, really old prints and drawings, especially. That recharges my batteries. Reading is kind of a double-edged sword because you read something really good, and there's the combination of, oh, this is so good, and I can't compete with this.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, just experiencing other people's creativity for a while, and just knowing that you don't have to be on all the time. There's many thousands of years of history where people have been created, and you can just sort of enjoy that for a while.
And I like what you said about the Met and about MoMA, because you're switching mediums, It's, as you said, it's not just like, oh, here's another writer. It's here's another piece of creativity. Here's another something awesome.
Yeah, and that helps because you don't have to, I'm never going to make a pot as good as this person from 5,000 years ago, but that's okay because I'm not trying to make pots.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the... When you say it like that, it's just kind of like, I've had 5,000 years of technological progression, and my pottery's going to be worse than this dude's.
Yeah, but like, that person was they spent their whole life, figuring out the best way to make a pot, given their culture and their technology, and that's worth some respect, and that's something that you can enjoy later.
No, yeah, I totally get that. I just remember, kids, you might not be as good as the person who 5,000 years ago made fishing hooks, because they were great fishing hooks. But
Yeah, it's not as easy to make a fish hook in real life as in Minecraft.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't think I've ever made a fish hook in real life. I mean, in Minecraft it comes with the pole, so it's even easier. You don't even have to make the
Yeah,
hook; it just happens.
yeah, you don't even need metal.
Incidental fish hook.
Yeah.